The most dangerous advice you ever received was to speak up for yourself. Stand up, defend your position, make your voice heard. That's what they told you, and that's why you're stuck exactly where you are right now. Every promotion you didn't get, every relationship that fell apart, every opportunity that vanished, it happened because you couldn't keep your mouth shut. The truth nobody wants to hear is that your words are destroying your life faster than any external enemy ever could. Successful people aren't successful because they speak well. They're successful because they know when to say absolutely nothing while you're busy explaining, defending, and proving yourself. They are quietly winning. The battlefield isn't out there with other people. It's between your brain and your mouth. And right now, your mouth is winning every single battle and losing you every single war. You say one wrong sentence in a meeting, and 3 months later, you're cleaning out your desk, you send one emotional text message at midnight, and by morning a 5-year relationship is over. You fire back one comment on social media, and suddenly you're unemployed, and you're unmarriageable, and your reputation is destroyed. This is the reality we're living in right now. Every single day, people are losing everything they've worked for because they couldn't keep their mouth shut for 60 seconds. Here's what the research shows us, and this is absolutely stunning. Studies conducted at major universities have found that 73% of professional conflicts could have been avoided if one person had simply remained silent. 73%. That means 3 out of every 4 arguments, confrontations. And career-damaging situations happen because someone couldn't resist the urge to respond. Think about that for a moment. Think about the last argument you had. Think about the last time you felt compelled to defend yourself, to explain yourself, to prove you were right. What did it cost you? The most successful people in the world follow what I call the 24-hour rule. When they're provoked, when they're insulted, when they're challenged, they do absolutely nothing. They wait. They let time pass. They let the situation breathe. And you know what happens? 90% of the time, the problem resolves itself without them saying a single word. The other person calms down, the situation changes, new information comes to light. But most people can't wait 24 hours. They can't wait 24 minutes. They respond immediately, and they pay for it for years. Let me tell you what happens in your brain when someone attacks you, criticizes you, or tries to provoke you. Your amygdala, the ancient part of your brain responsible for survival, gets activated immediately. It floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate increases, your blood pressure rises. And here's the critical part. Your prefrontal cortex, your part of your brain responsible for logic, reasoning, and good judgment, essentially shuts down. You become stupid, literally, scientifically, temporarily stupid. Every word you say in that state is going to be something you regret. Every single one. So this is why silence isn't just a nice idea. It's a strategic weapon. It's the difference between building wealth and destroying it. I know a CEO who saved his company $2 million by staying quiet in a single meeting. His competitor was trying to provoke him into revealing his negotiating position. They insulted his product. They questioned his competence. They tried everything to get him talking. He sat there, calm, composed, saying nothing, and his competitor, getting nervous from the silence, started talking and talking and talking and revealed their entire hand. $2 million saved because one man understood the power of keeping his mouth shut. And it took my experience, right, of all the persons who speak, how many are talking? Let me tell you about Walter. Walter was a senior executive at a manufacturing firm when a private equity company launched a hostile takeover attempt. The partners from this firm came into the boardroom and they were aggressive. They had done their homework. They knew every weakness in Walter's division. They started firing questions at him, accusations, really. They wanted him to get defensive. They wanted him to start explaining, justifying, making excuses, because the moment he did that, they would know exactly where the vulnerabilities were. Walter had prepared for this meeting, but his preparation wasn't about having better answers. It was about having no answers at all. When they asked him pointed questions about declining margins, he looked at them calmly and said nothing. When they accused him of poor leadership, he simply nodded and remained silent. When they demanded explanations, he took a sip of water and waited. The silence in that room became unbearable. Not for Walter, but for them. They started arguing with each other. They started contradicting their own points. They started revealing their actual concerns, their real timeline, their true financial limitations. 45 minutes into this meeting, Walter had said less than 30 words, but he had learned everything he needed to know. The takeover attempt fell apart within 3 weeks because Walter's team knew exactly how to position their defense, all because one man had the discipline to stay silent when every instinct was screaming at him to fight back. His silence didn't mean weakness. It meant power. It meant control. It meant victory. This principle goes back thousands of years, but somehow we've forgotten it. The most influential leaders in history were not the ones who talked the most. They were the ones who knew when to be quiet. Abraham Lincoln would write angry letters to his generals and political opponents, pour all his frustration onto paper, and then put those letters in his desk drawer and never send them. Never. He understood that the temporary satisfaction of expressing his anger would cost him the permanent achievement of his goals. Look at the modern billionaires, the ones building empires right now. Warren Buffett speaks publicly maybe 4 times a year. Bill Gates built Microsoft by listening more than talking. The richest people in the world have figured out something that broke people haven't. Your words are expensive. Every time you speak, you're spending your credibility, your influence, your power. Successful people are incredibly stingy with their words. They save them, they invest them carefully. Poor people, struggling people, they give their words away for free. They argue with strangers on the internet. They get into fights at work. They have to respond to everything, defend everything, explain everything, and they stay broke. Not just financially, but emotionally, relationally, spiritually broke. Silence is not the absence of strength. It's the ultimate expression of it, when you can be provoked and choose not to respond. You're demonstrating a level of self-mastery that most people will never achieve. You're operating from your higher brain, not your primitive survival brain. You're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. And that right there is why silence is the best answer for all questions. Because the question isn't whether you can respond, the question is whether you should. And most of the time, the answer is no, is the best answer for all questions. Every year, 42% of marriages end in divorce. Researchers have studied thousands of these failed relationships, and they've found something remarkable. In nearly every case, there's a pattern. It's not about money. It's not about infidelity. It's about something much simpler and much more devastating. It's about the inability to shut up during conflict. One partner says something hurtful, the other partner fires back, then it escalates. Before you know it, words have been said that can never be taken back. Wounds have been opened that will never fully heal, all because neither person had the strength to be quiet. Here's what most people don't understand about arguments. When you respond to anger with words, you're pouring gasoline on a fire. The other person isn't listening to your logic. They're not considering your point of view. They're loading their next attack. Every word you say gives them more ammunition. Every defense you make gives them another target. You think you're explaining yourself. You think you're making things better. You're actually making everything worse. The only way to win an argument is to refuse to have it. I'm going to tell you about a transformation that sounds impossible, but I watched it happen. Gerald was a successful architect, married for 12 years to a woman named Rita. By all external measures, they had a good life. Beautiful home, healthy kids, stable careers. But inside that home, there was a war happening every single day. They fought about everything. Who did more housework? Who spent more money? Who was more tired? Who sacrificed more? These fights would start over nothing and explode into hours of screaming, crying, and saying things designed to hurt each other as deeply as possible. Gerald came to one of my seminars, and he heard me talk about strategic silence. Afterward, he came up to me and said, "Brian, this might work in business, but you don't know my wife. If I don't defend myself, she'll think she's right. If I don't fight back, she'll just keep attacking. I have to respond." I looked at him and said, "How's that working for you?" He had no answer. I told him to try an experiment. For 30 days, no matter what Rita said, no matter how she provoked him, he would not engage. He would listen, he would stay calm, but he would not argue back. But the first week was brutal. Rita would start an argument, and Gerald would simply nod and say, "You might be right." This made her angrier. She escalated. She brought up past issues. She questioned whether he even cared about the marriage. And Gerald stayed quiet. He didn't defend, he didn't explain, he didn't counterattack. He just absorbed it and remained silent. Rita thought he was playing games. She thought he was being passive-aggressive. But something strange started happening in her mind. Without Gerald fighting back, she had nowhere to direct her anger. She was shadowboxing. Her words had no target. By the second week, the arguments got shorter. Rita would start to build up steam, but when Gerald didn't engage, the energy fizzled out. She'd storm off. But there was no satisfaction in it, no resolution, no winner or loser, just emptiness. And in that emptiness, something new grew. She started thinking about what she was actually upset about, not what she was saying in anger, but what she was really feeling underneath. Fear, insecurity, exhaustion, things she'd never been able to articulate because she was too busy fighting. By week 3, Rita started talking differently. Instead of attacking, she started sharing. Instead of blaming, she started expressing vulnerability. She told Gerald she felt disconnected from him. She told him she was scared about their future. She told him things she'd been holding inside for years, things that had been coming out as anger because she didn't know how else to communicate them. And Gerald listened, really listened, for the first time in years. They were having conversations instead of combat. After 30 days, Gerald called me. His voice was different, lighter. He said, "Brian, I got my wife back. I got my marriage back. And all I had to do was stop talking. The pattern had been broken. Rita wasn't fighting an enemy anymore. She was talking to a partner. And it happened because Gerald had the wisdom and the strength to stay silent when everything in him wanted to fight back." This same principle applies to your workplace right now. There are people in offices everywhere writing emails they're going to regret. Angry emails, defensive emails, emails that seem justified in the moment but will be forwarded to HR within 24 hours. I've seen careers destroyed by 3 sentences sent at 11 o'clock at night. The rule is simple. If you're emotional, you don't hit send, period. You write the email if you need to, get it all out, but you save it as a draft. You wait 24 hours, and when you read it the next day, you'll delete 90% of it. Let me tell you about Philip. Philip was a middle manager at a logistics company, and he had an employee who was constantly undermining him. This person would question his decisions in meetings, send emails challenging his authority, and complain to other team members. Philip was furious. Every instinct told him to confront this person, to put them in their place, to establish dominance. He drafted the email. It was 3 pages long. It was thorough. It was devastating. It would have won the argument. It also would have created a hostile work environment claim and probably cost Philip his job. Instead, Philip did nothing. He deleted the email. He said nothing in the meetings. He let the employee's behavior speak for itself. And here's what happened. Other people on the team started noticing. They saw someone attacking their manager for no good reason. They saw Philip staying professional while being treated poorly. They saw strength in his silence. Within 2 months, the difficult employee was isolated. Nobody wanted to work with them. They left the company voluntarily. And Philip got promoted. His boss told him, "We were watching how you handled that situation. Anyone can fight back. It takes a real leader to stay composed under fire." Think about your words like money. Every time you speak, you're making a transaction. You're either investing in your future or you're spending frivolously. Most people are verbally bankrupt because they're spending words everywhere on everything. They're arguing with the customer service representative. They're correcting strangers on the internet. They're explaining themselves to people who don't matter. Meanwhile, successful people are silent most of the time. They're saving their words. And when they do speak, those words carry weight because they're rare, they're measured, and they're valuable. There's a compound effect to controlled communication that most people never experience. When you talk less, people listen more. When you stop defending yourself, people stop attacking you. When you refuse to argue, you become the person everyone wants advice from. It's counterintuitive, but it's absolutely true. The less you say, the more influential you become. I've watched this happen hundreds of times. The quietest person in the room often becomes the most powerful, not in spite of their silence, but because of it. Let me tell you about Gregory. Gregory was a sales professional selling enterprise software solutions, big contracts, long sales cycles, sophisticated clients. He was good at his job, but he had a problem. He talked too much. He would get nervous in meetings and fill every silence with words, features, benefits, case studies, testimonials. He buried his prospects in information, and his closing rate was mediocre at best, around 23%. One day, Gregory was in a meeting with a potential client, a manufacturing company looking at a $500,000 software implementation. Gregory had prepared his usual presentation, slides, demos, ROI calculations, but 10 minutes into the meeting, the CEO stopped him and said, "I've heard enough about what your software does. What I want to know is whether you actually understand our business." It was a test. Gregory felt the pressure to prove himself, to demonstrate his knowledge, to talk his way into credibility. Instead, he did something he'd never done before. He closed his laptop, he put down his pen, he looked at the CEO and said, "Tell me what keeps you up at night." Then he stopped talking completely. The CEO started speaking, slowly at first, then faster. He talked about production delays. He talked about communication breakdowns between departments. He talked about losing clients because they couldn't track orders accurately. He talked for 20 minutes straight. Gregory said nothing. He just listened. He nodded. He took a few notes, but he didn't interrupt. He didn't jump in with solutions. He didn't try to connect every problem to a feature of his software. When the CEO finally stopped talking, there was silence. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Gregory didn't fill it. He let it sit there. The CFO, who had been quiet the whole time, leaned forward and said, "Can your system handle real-time inventory tracking across 12 facilities?" Gregory said, "Yes." That's all, one word. More silence. The CFO continued, "What about integration with our existing ERP system?" Gregory said, "Seamlessly." Another pause. The operations director asked, "How long for implementation?" Gregory said, 90 days. Short answers. Long pauses. The executives started talking among themselves. They were discussing their needs, their timeline, their budget. Gregory sat there and listened. He was learning everything about their decision-making process, their priorities, their concerns, information he never would have gotten if he'd been talking. After 40 minutes, the CEO looked at Gregory and said, "When can we start?" No negotiation, no pushing back on price, no competitor comparison. They bought. A $500,000 contract closed with fewer than 50 words spoken by the salesperson. Gregory told me later that the silence was excruciating. Every instinct screamed at him to fill the space, to prove his value, to convince them, but he held back. And in that silence, something powerful happened. The clients convinced themselves. They talked themselves into the sale. Because here's what most people don't understand about persuasion. You don't convince people by talking. You convince them by listening. When you're silent, the other person feels heard. They feel understood. And people buy from people who understand them, not from people who talk at them. This technique. The power pause creates psychological pressure that works in your favor. When you ask a question and then stay quiet, the other person feels compelled to fill that silence. They'll keep talking. They'll reveal information they didn't plan to share. They'll tell you their real objections, their actual budget, their true timeline. Silence makes people uncomfortable, and in that discomfort, they give you everything you need to know. There are 7 specific situations where silence will transform your results, and I want you to understand each one clearly. First, when someone criticizes you unfairly, say nothing. Let them talk. Let them exhaust themselves. They're expecting a fight. When you don't give them one, they lose all their power. Their words fall flat, and often they'll apologize later because they realize how foolish they sounded. Second, when someone tries to bait you into an argument, refuse to participate. They're looking for a reaction. They want to see you lose control. When you stay calm and silent, you deny them what they want. You win by not playing the game. Third, when gossip is brought to you, don't engage. Don't add to it. Don't even acknowledge it. People will quickly learn that you're not the person to come to with rumors and complaints. Your reputation will become one of integrity and discretion. Fourth, when your emotions are running high, stay quiet until they settle. This is critical. Anger, fear, anxiety. These emotions make you say things you don't mean and can't take back. Wait until you're calm. Wait until you can think clearly. Then decide if you need to say anything at all. Fifth, when you don't have all the facts, silence keeps you from making incorrect statements you'll have to walk back later. Gather information first. Speak second. Sixth, when dealing with manipulative people, silence breaks their patterns. Manipulators need you to react. They need you to engage. When you don't, their tactics fail. They move on to easier targets. Seventh, when your success can speak for itself, let it. Stop explaining your achievements. Stop justifying your decisions. Stop defending your choices. Results are louder than words could ever be. The person who talks about what they're going to do rarely does it. The person who stays quiet and executes becomes unstoppable. Now let's talk about implementation, because understanding a principle means nothing if you don't apply it. I'm going to give you a 21-day challenge that will change your life if you commit to it fully. This isn't theory. This is a practical system that thousands of people have used to transform their relationships, their careers, and their personal power. Week 1 is about building the pause habit before you respond to anything. Anyone, anywhere. You're going to count to 5 in your head every single time. Someone asks you a question, count to 5 before answering. Someone criticizes you, count to 5 before reacting. Someone sends you an upsetting text, count to 5 before typing back. This seems simple, but it's incredibly difficult. Your brain wants immediate response. Your ego wants immediate defense. Those 5 seconds create space between stimulus and response. In that space, you reclaim your power. During this first week, keep a small notebook. Write down every time you successfully paused. Write down every time you failed and reacted immediately. Be honest with yourself. You're building awareness. Week 2 is about choosing your battles. Not everything deserves a response. Not every criticism needs to be addressed. Not every argument needs to be won. This week, you're going to categorize every potential conflict that comes your way. Ask yourself 3 questions. First, will this matter in 5 years? Second, is this person important to my goals? Third, will responding improve the situation or make it worse? If the answer to all 3 questions isn't a clear yes, you stay silent. You let it go. You conserve your energy for battles that actually matter. Most people fight everything and win nothing. You're going to fight selectively and win strategically. Week 3 is about mastering the art completely. Now you're combining the pause with the filter. You're staying silent by default and speaking only when it adds genuine value. You'll notice something remarkable happening. People start treating you differently. They become more respectful. They stop trying to provoke you. They start seeking your opinion because when you do speak, it matters. Your words carry authority because they're not cheap. You're not the person who always has something to say about everything. You're the person who speaks wisdom when it counts. Let me tell you about Benjamin. Benjamin was 28 years old, working as a project coordinator at a construction firm. His boss, the operations manager, was a nightmare. Public criticism, unreasonable demands, taking credit for Benjamin's work. Every day was an exercise in humiliation. Benjamin would go home angry, venting to his girlfriend, losing sleep, planning confrontations he never had the courage to execute. He was trapped. He needed the job, he couldn't afford to quit, but staying was destroying him mentally and emotionally. Benjamin decided to try something radical. He stopped defending himself completely. When his boss criticized him in front of the team, Benjamin would nod and say, "I'll handle it," nothing more. When his boss took credit for his ideas, Benjamin said nothing. When unreasonable demands were made, Benjamin simply did the work without complaint or explanation. At first, his boss seemed to enjoy this even more. The lack of resistance felt like total victory. But something unexpected started happening. Other people noticed. The senior leadership noticed. The clients noticed. They saw a young man who stayed professional under impossible circumstances. They saw someone who delivered results without drama. They saw maturity beyond his years. Meanwhile, the boss's behavior became more obvious without Benjamin's reactions to justify it. There was no argument to point to, no insubordination to claim. Just a pattern of one person being unreasonable and another person being exemplary. 3 months into this approach, Benjamin got a phone call. It was from the CEO of a competing firm who had been on site for a project walkthrough. He'd witnessed one of the boss's public tirades against Benjamin. He'd watched Benjamin stay calm and handle it with grace. The CEO offered Benjamin a position as a project manager, not a coordinator, a 35% salary increase, a company car, real responsibility. Benjamin took the job. 4 months later, his old boss was fired for creating a toxic work environment. Multiple people filed complaints. Once Benjamin, the person who had absorbed the most abuse, was no longer there to be the target, Benjamin's silence didn't just protect him, it positioned him. It gave him a reputation that opened doors he didn't even know existed. That's the power we're talking about. That's what happens when you master your mouth and control your reactions. Here's your action plan, starting right now, this moment, before you go to sleep tonight. Make a commitment to yourself. Tomorrow, you will pause before every response. You will not react to provocation. You will not engage in pointless arguments. You will protect your peace like it's the most valuable thing you own, because it is. Set a reminder on your phone every 2 hours, a notification that says one word, pause. That's your trigger to check yourself. Are you about to say something you'll regret? Stop. Are you about to defend yourself unnecessarily? Don't. Are you about to win an argument but lose a relationship? Choose the relationship. Create your personal trigger list. Write down the 3 people who provoke you most. Write down the 3 situations that make you react emotionally. These are your danger zones. When you encounter them, your awareness needs to double. Your commitment to silence needs to triple. This is where you prove to yourself that you're in control. Not your emotions, not other people, not circumstances. The 90-second rule is your emergency brake. When you feel anger rising, when you feel the urge to lash out, you have 90 seconds before it becomes overwhelming. Neuroscience proves this. An emotional surge lasts 90 seconds. Unless you feed it with thoughts and words. Count to 90. Breathe slowly. Let the wave pass. After 90 seconds, you can think clearly again. You can choose your response instead of being controlled by your reaction. Your reputation is being built right now with every word you choose to say or not say. People are watching how you handle pressure. They're noting how you respond to criticism. They're evaluating whether you're someone they can trust with bigger responsibilities, bigger opportunities, bigger rewards. The person who can't control their mouth will never be trusted with power. The person who stays calm under fire becomes the leader everyone wants to follow. This isn't about being passive. This isn't about letting people walk over you. This is about being so secure in yourself that you don't need to prove anything to anyone. This is about understanding that your silence is more powerful than their noise. This is about playing the long game while everyone else is focused on winning the next 5 minutes, starting now. You have a choice that will determine everything else. You can keep doing what you've always done, reacting to everything, defending everything, arguing everything, and getting the same results you've always gotten. Or you can step into a different level of maturity, discipline, and power. You can become the person who speaks less and accomplishes more, the person who stays quiet and rises higher, the person who understands that silence isn't weakness, it's mastery. What you do in the next 24 hours will tell you which path you're choosing. The question has been answered. Now it's time to live the answer.